Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
We are back here after a break.
Yes, we're back in the Guildhall School after a well-earned rest.
Yeah.
Where did you go, Elif, over the last couple of weeks?
I visited home. I was in Turkey.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I was in Scotland doing a gig. So it's been quite busy, and now it's already August.
Yes, almost the end of August.
Kind of.
I don't want to.
How about you? Tell us about your adventures.
My adventures, I was working in Cologne, my usual gig at the Musikhochschule in Cologne. Then I spent a week in Marseille. Fantastique.
Magnifique.
Absolument. Fruits de mer, santé de fer.
No, I can't keep up with that.
Good. So who are we talking about this week?
We are talking about Janet Beat.
Fantastic. Very easy to pronounce her name, I have to say.
Especially compared to the previous episodes.
Yes.
I think so too. And here is a living composer who is a pioneering electronic music artist who was a contemporary of Daphne Oram and Delia Derbyshire. She was not well recognized at her time, just like the other two, but even after that.
Yeah.
So I hope that this episode contributes further to the well-deserved recognition.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic stuff. For me, I mean, just an overview of this collection of how many pieces of it in this collection? 7 pieces in this collection. It was fantastically nostalgic. It really brought back the 80s for me.
Actually, the recordings are a collection from between 78 and 87, I think.
Makes perfect sense.
That's very late 70s, early 80s things. In what sense did it bring you back to the 80s?
First of all, the biggest thing was, as you go through it, the first 3 pieces are all very much using analog technology. Mm-hmm. And then on track 4, Echoes of Bali, it was like, oh my God, that's a DX7. And the sound of the DX7, which was this Yamaha-produced synth in 1981, just completely took over electronic music, both in the kind of high art electronic music world and in popular music in particular.
Also, it is a collection of many genres of electronic music. That's how it felt to me, because each piece is different from one another. Of course, there is a overall homogeneous album approach in one go. When you look at the overall picture of the collection of works, I think it's a very good selection in that sense. But each piece has a different statement and story, or a different approach. In that sense, I find it really unique. But it also carries traces of other times, including the 80s.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, because first of all, there's the sort of the technology of the 80s. So it was the first FM synth that was available.
Yeah. John Chowning.
Exactly, John Chowning's creation, FM synthesis, frequency modulation synthesis, and it was a digital system, so the sounds are really glassy and bright and transparent. And the FM, the complex FM with 6 operators in a DX7 mean that you can have certain aspects of the synth that are only working on just the transients at the beginning.
Yeah.
So you get these very, very convincing percussive sounds.
Yeah.
That appeared on every pop record from 1981 to about 1989. Log drum, ref's whistle. I mean, I've heard them. I know them all. I can see them all in front of me, And it was also, something that was quite ironic for me was that the album title refers to Knob Twiddler, doesn't it? It's Pioneering Knob Twiddler.
Pioneering Knob Twiddler, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a sort of self-deprecating term for electronic musician, you know, because of all the knobs on the desk and knobs on the synth.
I like the name.
Yes, it's great.
It's super cool, isn't it?
Yeah. And twiddling knobs. I mean, that's friends of mine who aren't musicians always saying, "What are you doing, Jono? Have you been off twiddling knobs again?" You know, it's like...
It would be a very good DJ nickname. Or...
Yeah, DJ Knob Twiddler.
Yeah. Maybe...
Well, there is an artist, Amp Fiddler.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
okay. But the thing with this album is we are talking about works that belong to a certain period of time, but actually not all. She composed so many pieces of music, and actually only one of these, the opening track, what was it? Dancing on Moonbeams. The more of the ambient track. That was the only commercially released piece of music from her in 1981 in a compilation titled Music by Scottish Composers, Volume 1. Then for 40 years, that was the only commercially released product. She had been composing music, electronic music, long before that. So the journey started long ago. All these pieces of equipment that we now talk about might have contributed a lot to how it sounds, but I think that was not the... I mean, it's not what I think, it's how it is. That was not the only thing. Those were not the only things she used. When she got into this institution in Scotland, she did build her own oscilloscope, and she did learn about electronics and electricity. And here is someone that composed music from very early ages. And it's a musical journey that started at a very young age, and we meet some artists who were encouraged by their parents to study piano or whatever, and we see these super kids today where they send, parents try to send their kids to everything, to piano, ballet time, sports, exercise now, etc. Whereas in this case, here's someone that explores piano at the age of 3, playing something with these notes, and then puts her head on the wood to listen to the harmonics, not the gin that we were talking about. We were talking about knock on wood and touch the wood, the Turkish English things. But
worldwide, everybody knocks on wood when they've got some good luck to talk about.
Yeah.
And I was saying to you before we started recording that the origin of it allegedly is that ancient pagan peoples thought that the devils and jinns and whatever and demons lived in the wood, so that when you were saying good news, you would stop them hearing it by knocking on the wood. Yeah. And that's why I always knock on my head.
But you have so much knowledge there. Let's keep it intact after it. So, coming back to my point about her, she would listen to the sounds there to hear these tiny bits of harmonics. So she was interested in this type of music
and the nature of sound itself.
Exactly.
At a very early age.
And then I can hear that in this much later release compilation collection.
What's interesting actually with her background in the essence of sound and working with pure electronics is how tonal all this music is.
It is.
It really is. It's
very tonal.
It's in keys, and I think that there's a real legacy of a keyboard player in there.
There is.
Yeah, because you can hear that she's working with keyboards. She's hearing relationships in notes and harmonies.
So it is in keys, even in the electronic music pieces. And there is also a particular thing to say here. It's microtonal also.
Yeah.
So because she loved exploring microtonal music, and she's a classically trained composer, so she knows all of the instruments well. But she also explored non-Western instruments, including the Javanese
gamelan.
the gamelan, which we hear in the in one of the pieces.
Well,
here.
two of the pieces actually, because there's the in Echoes from Bali, of course. So Bali, of course, Bali is the home of the gamelan. But also there's a piece, the last piece in the collection, Piangam. Which is, of course,
that piece is the most interesting in the album, I think.
Yeah. And it's a combination of the sound of the piano and the sound of the gamelan, so that it has a prepared piano feeling. It's got field recordings.
There is also white noise and bit crashing.
Yes.
That sounds like almost these chiptune tracks where they use white noise as a percussion.
Yeah.
And you can hear that combined with the piano and gamelan in this piece. That's why I think
early
it's really
sampling
interesting.
stuff going on there. Yeah. And also, with Echoes from Bali, which is the piece the first time in this collection you really hear the DX7. She's obviously, unlike the vast majority of people who use DX7s, nobody knew how to program it, so they just used the presets. But you can hear that she's programming it properly, and what she's doing is she's using percussive sounds, and then later on in the piece, using the same sounds but opening up the harmonics and playing with the different levels of the different harmonic from the percussive sound. That was the brilliant thing with FM synthesis, that it's allowed much easier use of, I'm going to sound very posh here, but enharmonic spectra. So you would have, instead of like the normal harmonic series of that you would get from a square wave, you could have very, very complex harmonics, which sound like that's how objects with very complex densities, like metal or whatever, when you hit them, they have these same very, very complex spectra, so everything suddenly sounded like tubular bells. Yeah. Tubular bells is like one of the presets on a DX7. The sound of tubular bells that was synthesized as a preset in the DX7. Yeah. Do they know it's Christmas time? Those tracks, it was the DX7 tubular bells.
You could unlock, reveal the harmonics from a sound source that you otherwise would not be able to access with your human ear or with the instruments at that time. So,
but it was also because with metallic percussion in reality, where all those harmonics really happen is in these tiny, like, milliseconds right at the beginning when you hit the thing, and then all the resonances that continue are quite simple waveforms after that. But when you create that artificially, then you can extrapolate and pull out all those really complex harmonics just from the transient, and make them audible. And that's what she's doing in that fourth track. But there's a cultural thing going on. I remember very strongly from this period, from like 81 to sort of 85, there was a bit of a cultural obsession with the exotic. I suppose it's always going on, but that particular period, maybe because of the technology, everyone was interested in gamelan. Everyone played the marimba. It was a really popular instrument. Everyone was plundering African music for the first time. King Sunny Ade and the African beats and all this. They were first appearing.
This term exotic is so wrong on many levels.
It is, and it brought back to me. There was a friend of mine, Dave Barbarossa, absolutely fantastic drummer, and he was the drummer in this band Bow Wow Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, and he created this particular rhythm on the tom-tom, all triplets, that got known as, really patronisingly, the Burundi rhythm, so it was like African drums, but in pop music, in a really simplistic way. I mean, it's fantastic playing. You know, I mean, Dave's playing of it is brilliant. You know, there's the way she's working with gamelan, and also the way she's working with Japanese culture as well in this piece, Shirabe, reminded me a lot of a similar thing from the same period, which was David Byrne and Brian Eno's album My Life in the Bush of Ghosts.
Yeah, yes.
Which nowadays you wouldn't for a second dream of the cultural appropriation involved in that. It's absolutely one of the naughtiest but most fabulously sounding records.
Yeah, but then that also paved the way for what he did with John Hassel. Yeah. So just for that, I would still appreciate it a lot. Yeah.
So you know, it's a bit of a cultural minefield, but that particular range of cultural appropriation that was going on in the early 80s is something that this collection really reminded me of.
I see.
Yeah.
But this piece, Shirabe, or how is it pronounced? Shirabe. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about that, although that's a good perspective. I was thinking more about how she explores tonalities on electronics, as we talked about earlier, and also towards the middle. That reminded me one of the pieces we discussed here, Voices Within by Laurie Spiegel, where you have gradual progression and gradual change of harmonics, but then you explore that electronically, and I believe there is a harpsichord, which sounds almost like a prepared harpsichord, doesn't it?
I was wondering whether some of the harpsichord stuff was actually from the DX7. I was wondering whether she'd programmed that harpsichord sound. Or
she also talks about a Roland 100. Roland 100M.
Oh, that's that. We've got one in the room.
16 oscillators.
We've got one. Yes, there is. We have to say, although this is only an audio podcast, there is behind us in this room a Roland modular system, the 100M.
Yeah, so that's what she had, and the funny thing is that pops up today in this room. Yeah, we've seen some babies in this room, and when we are talking, looks like we are talking about it. Yeah, that's she used that with 16 oscillators, and that allowed her a lot of things to explore. In fact, you're right. The harpsichord recording the harpsichord sound might have been generated by that.
But shirabe is quite an interesting word because it's like so many Japanese words. The same sound has lots of different meanings, and it depends on how it's written. You know, so it can mean investigation or inspection, but it also is used to mean tune or melody or note. So that's why it's this very tonal approach to music rather than.
I like Japanese language.
It's absolutely
as if I know based on the very little I know.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And it's because of those two different meanings. It's an expression that's used a lot in shakuhachi playing. Do you know the shakuhachi flute?
Shakuhachi flute.
Shakuhachi is a Japanese flute, which is one of the very, very advanced musical forms, particularly musical art forms of Japan, where, like all classical Japanese music, it's pentatonic, very, very limited range of notes, but a fantastic and profoundly developed sound world from the sound of the blowing of the flute and the overtones and how the sound of the wind and all the rest of it can be conjured.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Very, very special. Yeah. And
shirabe.
When there's a nice quote here I've picked up from a website about the word shirabe. However, in its original musical sense, the word denoted a piece which delved deep into the state of the performer, the state of bamboo, or indeed the state of the sentient universe.
Sentient universe.
That's pretty serious stuff, you know.
It is.
That's heavy Zen palaver going on there. So that's shirabe. So she's used that word obviously, in full knowledge of what it meant.
Exactly. And I mean, in one interview, she mentions that she has been to these places for a holiday. It was not like a music visit. Like, she was invited to one of the universities in Germany, Nuremberg, as a visiting composer. One of the Hochschule for Music. But whereas for Bali, it was a tourism trip, but then she did explore the gamelan from behind the scenes. And that's how she exposed herself to it, like an ordinary listener, not like a composer, but then that might have helped in terms of internalizing it better. I can hear in all of the pieces the microtonalities she explores, and today you see a lot of Instagram artists learning about microtonal music outside of Western harmonies or Eurogenetic harmonies.
Outside of equal temperament. I mean, equal temperament is, it is a fudge. It is a very, what a fifth is between two notes here will be different between another two notes. It's not precise. It's not clear, and we've been jammed into equal temperament, and it's just one dominant culture that's forced that on the rest of the world.
There are like bigger range of sounds.
All the Turkish makam,
Makam, but also the folk music, and it's. When you play bağlama, saz, you can access more sounds, within the half tone. That's how those instruments are built, and bigger rock bands, the one from Australia, King Lizard.
And the King Lizard and the Gizzard Wizard.
They visited Turkey and
King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
I can never ever remember their names, but their shows are always sold out in Turkey. And when they visited Turkey, they decided they will turn all their instruments into microtonal. So it's becoming a thing now, and also most recently one of the pioneering artists in Turkey for psychedelic rock. He died, Erkin Koray, and he did start this kind of a thing, Anatolian rock in Turkey, which is being discovered by more people now with artists like Selda Bağcan. And
Babazula, my friend Babazula.
And there is this band called Altın Gün from the Netherlands that seems to be very popular. I have to be honest, I'm not a big fan of them. But after them, it became very popular also. And now, synth peoples, modular people also are looking for microtonalities in their work. And Expert Sleepers is exploring it, design.
Expert Sleepers was an excellent company, Expert Sleepers are.
Yeah. This is not an ad for us.
No, this is not product placement.
Product. Okay, we are. Product placement. To conclude the point, she did work on microtonalities, both in her electronic instruments and acoustic sounds. You can hear that in this album, and especially in this piece, the Lighthouse's Waltz.
I have to say, now I'm going to do a bit more product placement here. Lighthouse's Waltz really reminded me of pieces by my band from quite an early part of the band. My band Metamono. We started recording stuff in 2010, and one of the things is that we build all our own gear or get it secondhand, and so consequently the calibration and the tuning is never, let's say. It's a little nebulous.
Nebulous.
But basically, stuff is out of tune.
Yeah.
And it's not cleverly done. It's just, that sounds nice. Let's do it.
Isn't it a very good way to make music and create something?
Absolutely.
That sounds nice. There you go.
Yeah. And it's tonal music, but the tuning is whatever. It's not equal temperament. And this piece really reminded me of Metamono. And it's quite funny. I mean, overall, there is a feeling with this whole collection that she's kind of a bridge between popular music and kind of art music.
Yeah. That's quite accurate, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a sense that she's got
introduction for early electronic music to someone who never heard those things.
Yeah. It's like she had her feet in both camps, really, in a way, which is really nice. I mean, the other thing that I thought was a particular trope from this period is one of the pieces is for guitar. This is it. This is the thing with the
Swept by Train.
Yes, this is the one with the fabulous typo. There's a typo in the track listing, which so that this track was originally written as A Willow Swept by Rain. And is now known as A Willow Swept by a Train.
A train, yeah.
So A Willow Swept by Rain, which of course is this very pastoral, wonderful image. But what was very nostalgic about that for me was that in the 80s, because that's when I was studying electronic music at Middlesex, it was this thing that a solo instrument plus electronics was one of the ways that everyone was composing music. So you would write for a solo instrument and you'd expand the sound of the instrument into the electronics.
So
and
mixed media with one instrument.
That's it, yeah.
I see, yeah.
And that was, everybody basically had to do it. It was a basic assignment on every electronic music course was write a piece for bongos and electronics, write a piece for clarinet and electronics, or write a piece for classical guitar and DX7,
Yeah, that's a very good exercise in a way.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I feel this album, Knob Twiddler, showcases a number of examples and genres or experiences, including that. And you have a theremin sound in the lighthouses,
absolutely,
not the waltz one. So here's someone that is classically trained, that exposed herself to all sorts of music and sounds, but also she did discover the work of Pierre Henry and Stockhausen, and she did visit also Daphne Oram in her studio in Kent.
Oh, nice.
And she was supported by Daphne Oram. She did. Daphne appreciated her work. She never met Delia, but they were all not well represented, underappreciated at their time. But here's someone who could discover the work of Pierre Henry and Stockhausen, someone who grew up in a house where she was not allowed to make music, where her tapes were being used by her father to hang plants, tomatoes, to grow. So, that was the case. And basically her work sounds were destroyed. And she was not encouraged by her father. She was not encouraged by the fellow male artists or academics she met. But despite that, she exposed herself to all sorts of sounds. She did self-learn things, but then she got support from institutions, including in Birmingham, I think.
Which has always been very, very strong in electronic music.
Yeah. And that's what we got as a result. So that's why you can hear all sorts of examples. But also, it is accessible electronic music.
It is very accessible, isn't it? It has that slightly pop feeling. I mean, it's funny that the Roland 100M system that's in here. The other great exponent of that particular synth is Vince Clarke. Mm-hmm. Vince Clarke from Depeche Mode, Erasure, and there is a similarity in the sound world.
Yeah, it's very 80s in that sense. Yeah.
But that's for me now. The 80s isn't kind of shoulder pads and frizzy hair. You know what I mean? It's like a really essentially exploratory time in music. I think some fantastic stuff came.
And that's a good way to follow the 70s, which was also a very golden age.
One point, I was just checking my notes there just before we close, is what I found quite ironic was the album's called Pioneering Knob Twiddler. One of the things is that on the DX7, which is a really important synth and all this stuff, is that one of the reasons why people found it so difficult to work with at the beginning, and why everyone just used the presets, is there are no knobs.
Yeah.
There's just buttons and one data entry slide.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so you can't really be a knob twiddler on a DX7.
I think you really have focused on the name and title. Maybe you explored more of it. But I think that was not the only piece of equipment.
No, God, no. Well, yes, I mean, using the roller.
Yeah,
Oh, but there is actually
more of the tapes also.
There was lots of tape stuff going on.
She got tapes to work on. That's how she started.
Yeah. And there's a Proteus unit. I just look at some of these contact mics. Roland, that's another thing that you hear a lot, especially on the Moonbeams track at the beginning, is the Roland Space Echo, which is a favourite, of course, of reggae musicians. Mm-hmm. You know, again, there's another link with
multiple genre accessible electronic music albums. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And have a listen to Janet's album I listened to it on Spotify.
Yeah, this was available with limited edition, 500 copies, but it's available on all of the streaming channels.
On the digital streaming platforms. So have a listen.